Hey guys, welcome back to the channel. My name is Derek Coffey and I'm the founder of FWP. And I think we're all in agreement that retirement should be as enjoyable as possible. You've scratched and clawed for the last 30 or 40 years to finally get yourself to a point that you can call it quits. Now, with all of the excitement that comes with retirement, we do need to take into account the frivolous spending that can occur. Because you have all of this additional free time, it opens up opportunities for you to start leaking money. Some of these things are going to be big. Some of these things are going to be small. But in the end, when you're on a fixed income, it all begins to add up. In this video, we're going to get into the top 5 money pits for retirees. Yes, this is going to be situation dependent based on how much money you have saved, based on how much money you have coming in. But for a lot of people, what I have found in my experience, they've wasted a lot of money on these 5 things specifically. Stay tuned. So the first and probably most common money pit that I see retirees get themselves into is purchasing an RV or a camper. Now, from a practical standpoint, it does make sense to basically take your house and put it on wheels. That way you can take everything with you. But when it comes to buying and owning a camper, there are a couple of issues you should be aware of. The first and most obvious is the high upfront cost. If you buy an RV, one where everything is contained into one vehicle, it's going to cost you a significant amount of money. If you decide to purchase a tag along, one that you pull with you, that's also going to cost you a significant amount of money. Not only do you have to buy the trailer, but you're also going to have to buy a vehicle to pull it. In addition to that, you still have to maintain all of this stuff, whether it's the RV, the truck, and the camper, whatever the case is, you still have to maintain it. You have to insure it. You have to put fuel in it. You have to do all of the things that you would normally have to do with any other vehicle. The final issue you need to take into account is that the setup and tear down of an RV or a camper isn't always going to be easy. Sure, they have buttons that'll put the jacks down and it'll auto level and all that stuff, but what about loading it? What about unloading it? What about driving it in general? As you get older, all of these things are going to get a little bit more difficult. And then once you stop using the RV because you're just not able to anymore, it's just going to sit in your driveway. If you try to sell it, you're probably not going to get anything near what you paid for it. So all in all, it's a money losing situation. So if you're not an avid traveler, I would strongly urge you to reconsider the RV or the camper, or at least purchasing it. There are other things that you can do to go and enjoy that camping lifestyle. You can go to outdoorsy.com or RV Share and rent someone's camper from them for a week. Even if you spend $1,000 to rent an RV and take your trip, it's going to be much less expensive than purchasing and then still having to maintain that vehicle as time goes on. So if you're not an avid camper, if you've never camped before, I would strongly urge you not to purchase an RV. Rent one first, give it a try. Maybe you like it, maybe you don't, but either way, you're not out that significant chunk of change in the very beginning of your retirement. The second money pit that I want you to avoid is a vacation home or a timeshare. A lot of the retirees that I work with love the beach, and the reason that is because I live in Virginia and there are 3 good beaches within a day's drive. So a lot of the people that I'm associated with have spent a lot of time at the beach, and that's where they want to be in their retirement or just in their free time in general. So when they do retire, they get this urge to go purchase a vacation home, but they're not taking into account all of the costs associated with it. Just like the RV and the camper, you had the huge upfront cost. You're going to probably put down 20% because it's going to be a second home. So if you can afford that, that's great. But for a lot of people, that large amount of money coming out of your investments or from your savings that early in your retirement, that's really going to put a damper on things. In addition to that upfront cost, you have to worry about those ongoing costs. In a lot of cases, you're going to be in an HOA, so you're going to have those fees. You have to maintain the property. You're going to have to pay property taxes and insure it. So all of the same things that you're dealing with your own home, you're going to have to deal with the vacation home. The final thing that you have to keep in mind is that as good as it sounds when it comes to the money of renting a vacation home, that's still stress that you have to deal with. If you haven't been a landlord before and your first foray into real estate is with a vacation home, I would strongly urge you to reconsider. The stress that's associated with renting out a property is very high. It's not as easy as it's cracked up to be. On top of that, whatever you get as far as rent goes, you're going to have to pay a property manager a certain percentage of that. So even though those numbers look good, the stress and then the additional costs associated with it may not be that great. If you want to avoid this money pit specifically, then use Airbnb, use Verbo, use a local property manager in the area you like to go, and find homes that are available for you to rent. Yes, same thing as renting an RV. It might cost you $1,000, $1,500, $2,000, up to $4,000 or $5,000 for that week, but it is much less expensive to just rent it for the week and not have to worry about all of the additional costs associated with owning that home. Money pit number 3 is going to be impulse shopping. Now that you're retired, you have a bunch of free time, and you're not going to have something scheduled every single day of the week. Your retired friends are going to be doing whatever retired activities they want to do. Your kids are going to be working. Your grandkids are going to be in school. There's just not going to be anything for you to do except sit at the house. Now, if you decide to sit at the house, you're probably either going to watch TV or you're going to scroll on your phone. Either way, you're going to be constantly bombarded with ads for you to buy stuff. The more you see these ads, the more you're going to self-justify why you might need them. That's practical. It's something that could help around the house. But in a lot of cases, it's just going to be unnecessary. Now, if you're stuck in the house and you want to get out of the house, you're going to have to go somewhere. Well, somewhere's typically a store. It could be the grocery store, it could be a sporting goods store, but either way, you're putting yourself in another situation where you could spend money. So if you get in a situation where you're at the store or you're stuck at the house and this ad really has your attention, give yourself 24 hours. Think about why you might need or want that item before you purchase it. If you wait a day and you come back to it and you're like, hey, I still need that, or it could be useful around the house, then absolutely purchase it. But just be mindful of that money you're spending. The problem with spending money is it's emotional. If you're stuck at the house and you want to get out of the house because you're bored or the cabin fever's setting in, and you go to the store and you buy something, then that happiness and that dopamine release is going to be attached to you spending that money. So if you don't keep some type of structure in place when it comes to spending money on impulse purchases, then it could snowball into something that gets a little out of control. And then the last thing you want to avoid with the impulse shopping is you don't want to accumulate a bunch of stuff. If you've ever closed an estate for one of your loved ones and went through all of their belongings, you probably thought to yourself, my God, how much stuff could they have? Well, that comes from impulse shopping. That comes from just spending money because you're bored. If you didn't like doing it then I would urge you to reconsider those impulse purchases. That way you don't have to put your kids through it when they're settling your estate. But just keep in mind that those impulse purchases, even as small as they can be, they can slowly eat in to your monthly budget while you're retired. The fourth money pit we want to avoid is going out to eat too much. Now, I'm not saying you can't go out to eat. You can absolutely go out to eat, but just do it within reason. If you're going out to eat to be social, then I can't blame you, right? The restaurant's going to make the food. They're going to clean up for you. They'll even make the drinks for you if that's what you decide to do during lunch. And it's very easy and convenient to go out to eat. But the problem with this is that once you start paying $15 or $20 a person, then these expenses start to add up. 3 or so lunch dates a week can get very expensive, especially when you're on that fixed income. So instead of going out socially all the time, consider doing a potluck at the house. Get everybody together, that everyone brings a dish, and you all participate in cooking the meal, and then you get to enjoy your time together at home. Now, if you're going out to eat all of the time just because you don't want to go to the store, you don't want to cook, you don't want to clean, then there are ways to make that a little bit easier. If you're trying to avoid going to the store, you just don't want to walk around and try to find stuff, then consider a meal delivery service. Something like HelloFresh, Blue Apron, or EveryPlate. All of these services will send you the ingredients you need. They give you the recipes, they give you the instructions. All you have to do is cook it. In a lot of cases, it's only going to take a half an hour of your time, and you're only going to dirty up a lot of dishes when it comes to making something with pasta in it. The reason I know this is because I personally use EveryPlate. I love it. The service is delivered to me every single week. And please keep in mind, this isn't a sponsorship of any kind. This is just me giving you my personal experience. But I love EveryPlate. It costs about $6 per meal, and it's more than worth it when I take into account that I don't have to worry about thinking about dinner, and I don't have to worry about walking through the store to find all of the ingredients. Now, if you would like to give it a try, I'll put a link in the description that you can get a couple of free meals out of the deal. They send it right to you. I think all you have to pay is shipping, but you can give it a whirl and see just how easy it is. And it's going to be much, much cheaper than going to restaurants every single day. The final money pit that we want to avoid is being overly charitable with your money. Now, some of you may not like this one as much, but I do want to put it out there so that way you can at least keep it in mind. When you're retired, you have more time to think about your legacy. You have more time to think about the things that you could have done if you weren't working so much. And one of those things is probably giving back in some way. When you're sitting at home and you're watching TV, you're going to see ads all the time about supporting certain causes. And the one that gets me every single time is the SPCA. Every time they put those starving animals on the TV, I get the urge to go donate $1 a day or whatever it is. That way I can help save the starving puppies. So as you get older and you're thinking about your legacy, it's going to be even easier for you to open up your checkbook and help out the SPCA. But the problem with that is if you get sucked into 3, 4 organizations every single month that maybe you're just sending $25 to a piece, that's still $100 a month that you're spending. Now that's great. You're not really going over the top, but when you do hit situations that you need to pare back your expenses, it's going to be very difficult for you to cut off your charitable giving. The reason that is because you have that emotional attachment to it. You've been thinking about that legacy. You've been thinking about helping in any way you can. So it's going to be very difficult for you to cut out that $100 or maybe $150 a month that you've been donating. So when it comes to your charitable contributions, set a budget. Maybe it is $100 a month. And if you can afford that and it doesn't put you in any type of financial bind, then absolutely do it. But make sure that you don't go over that budget. Now, if you still have the urge to do more or give more, then give your time. Your time is free, so you could do something with your church. You could go to the local homeless shelter, but as opposed to spending the money, you could just donate your time, and the only thing it costs you is the fuel to get there. Now, this is the one where you may not agree with as much, but one of the biggest charities in your life, especially now, is probably going to be your children. Your children, now more than ever, are going to need more financial help than ever before. The reason that is because everything is so expensive. But what I want you to keep in mind is that as charitable as you want to be, as much as you want to help your children, you have to put a limit on it. Now, I understand having a kid and wanting to do anything and everything you can do to help them. But once my son becomes an adult, he's going to have to fend for himself once I get to the point I can't help him anymore. It's foolish for you to put yourself behind the 8 ball or put yourself in any type of situation where money's going to be a problem simply because you're helping your children. Now, they can move back in with you. Maybe you can start splitting groceries, start splitting phone bills, start doing all of those things. But when it comes to them living on their own and living their own life and you handing them money to maintain that life, you have to be very careful about this because you're going to put yourself in a very precarious position. Once you run out of money, who are you going to have to lean on? The kid that you've been helping the whole time? Probably not. So I'm not saying not to help your children. By all means, help them, but only do it to the point that you can afford it. Once it becomes too much, turn the spigot off and make sure your finances are as good as they can possibly be. That way you can continue enjoying your retirement. Now, I want you to keep in mind, I'm not telling you to be a hermit or a Scrooge in your retirement. You should absolutely enjoy all of the free time that you work so hard for over the course of your career. But what I do want you to keep in mind is the money that you are spending. Be conscious about it. Take into account those upfront costs for the things like a camper or a vacation home, and don't forget about those continuing costs that you're going to have to cover. When it comes to the impulse shopping, keep in mind you're on a fixed income now. It's not that weekly or biweekly paycheck that you were used to. When it comes to being charitable, don't let them drain you dry. Make sure you're only spending what you can afford to spend. Your retirement is fully your responsibility, so don't put yourself in a position where you're going to have to be pinching pennies just to make it to your funeral. I want to thank you so much for tuning in. If this video or any of the other videos that I've put out has provided you value, then hit that subscribe button. If there's a money pit that wasn't mentioned in the video, but one that you've seen or you fell into yourself, then feel free to leave a comment on the video. That way other people can be aware of it as well. If you know someone that's getting ready to retire and they're thinking of making one of these major purchases, or they are overly charitable with their money, then send this video to them. Maybe it'll help save them a large chunk of money. But I want to thank you so much for tuning in. I'll talk to you soon.